Okay, there we go. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. It's a little weird because I cannot see you and I cannot hear you, but we'll have a chance to discuss within the Q&A. And yeah, thank you for making it. Today is, what is it? Monday, Tuesday, Monday night, and you're here with us. So yeah, kudos for joining us. And I hope this session will be useful for you. I'm looking forward to all of your questions. Today I'm going to tell you about when and how to use HTTPS for local development. And I think it's an interesting topic because we never really think all that much about it. Like oftentimes you just go in and type HTTP localhost 8080 in your local, like in your browser, and you don't really think all that often about what's happening unless something goes wrong, and then you have to think about what's happening. So we're going to explore a little bit tonight and try and answer this specific question. But first, real quick about me. So this is me, Maud. On the bottom left here is my Twitter handle. And I work at Google as a developer relations engineer for web privacy and security. This is like a long theme, but basically I work together with the web developer relations team in order to make our guidance when it comes to good privacy and security practices a little, easier to talk about and easier to reason about. Yeah, I studied in Lille, in the north of France, if anyone here comes from around there. And right now I am calling you from Berlin, Germany. So yeah, so much about me. Yeah, important. The scope of this talk is local development. So mostly the tips I'm gonna share with you tonight are really only for local development. So just keep this in mind. I put here for you a picture of a hacker. You know how they represent developers in the media. This talk is really about local development. If you, for anything you do in prod, of course, use HTTPS always in prod. If you're in case in the audience, some of you have a site that's not using HTTPS yet, please make this a priority and use HTTPS now. If you're not sure where to start, you can look into Let's Encrypt. It's really easy to get started with, and it's a great way to come in and add an HTTPS certificate to your site in case it's missing. Thank you. Jeff just shared the link over here in the chat for you all. Right, so this is for the context. So for this reason, because most of the time, like most websites nowadays are actually using HTTPS, when you're developing locally, you want your web app to behave as if it was HTTPS, because you want to avoid any surprises when jumping from local development to staging or worse, prod, right? And actually there's something weird here that's happening. So when you're developing locally, you're actually most of the time in HTTP localhost, right? So I'm going to show you something real quick. I'm going to show you a little demo. Oh yeah. So yeah, this is a little demo app I just built, which is about adopting a fish, because why not, right? Everybody adopts dogs and cats, but I think it's really cool also to have a fish at home, and there are lots of fish probably looking for a family. So maybe you want to adopt a fish, okay? And say in order to adopt the fish, you need to, I don't know, make a payment, for example, to the Lonely Pets Institute. All right. So in that case, please ignore what's in there. For now, we're gonna come back to this. But so here I have this little, it's a React app that is running locally on my computer. I'm running this on HTTP localhost over here. And I'm using an API for payments that's called Payment Request API. It's okay if you're not familiar with this API. It's just for the purpose of this example. So here I'm trying to use this API, and of course these are not my actual credit card details, right? But you can see that something is happening on my screen. By the way, can you see all right? Isn't it too small? Can someone in the chat write and tell me if you can see my screen okay? If no complaints, I'll just continue. So it's okay, we can, okay, awesome, perfect, thank you everybody. Right, so turns out that locally, I can actually use the payment request API without a problem. All right, so far so good. And I'm on, remember, right? I'm on HTTP localhost. However, say you take the same app that I've deployed in a non-secure in a non-secure way, right? So this is actually here. This is really HTTP, as you can see, HTTP localhost, HTTP fish. This is the same app but deployed, all right? Now let's have a look at how that exact same feature behaves here. Beam, payment request is not supported. I've just added a little feature check in the code. So it turns out this exact same feature, this exact same API payment request is working fine locally on HTTP localhost, but it's not working on HTTP whatever deployed. Actually, this sort of like this stuff happens, but we never all really think that much about it unless this breaks, just like the case I showed you. So do you folks have an idea why this happens? I'm going to wait a few seconds and see what happens in the chat. What do you think? What do you think is like that? Why is it working locally and on HTTP localhost, but it's not working on HTTP? Payment API needs HTTPS. Browser security, yeah. All right, so it's a good assumption. You would think, okay, the payment API needs HTTPS, but then why is it working locally on HTTP localhost? This is not HTTPS, right? So it's something a little weirder. Context change, yeah, I like that. Context is a good word. We're coming closer, so I guess we're ready to move on to the next. Yeah, I showed that already. Why? So the answer is SecureContext. So well done, Anthony. I guess you won. I don't have a prize, sorry, but you won glory for tonight. So SecureContext, here I put together for you the definition from Mozilla, from the MTN Web Docs. So a secure context is a context that browsers consider secure. What does this mean? I just basically repeated the name of what this is, but you can really think of it as the context is considered secure when there are no risks of man-in-the-middle attacks, which are also called on-path attacks now, but it's like the same thing. So like you are not vulnerable as a user to man-in-the-middle attacks when you're visiting an HTTPS website. That's what HTTPS is for, because the network in and on itself is considered insecure. Anyone could come in, but you're protected. You're protected by the HTTPS certificate. When you're developing locally, there are no risks of basically man-in-the-middle attacks, because you're on your own computer and this is the loopback address. And for this reason, browsers consider localhost, HTTP localhost, or 127.0.0.1. In all of the talks, whenever I say localhost, it's exactly the same as for 127.0.0.1. As you probably know, this is like the same thing. So for this reason, because locally you're not vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks, localhost is considered a secure context by the browser. Okay, so the reason for this is like security, as I mentioned before, to prevent low-level computer access or to prevent credential access. Because I'm gonna tell you about a few APIs that relate to credentials and that do require a secure context. And the other reason is privacy. So, like I said before, localhost is a secure context because locally on-path attacks are not a concern. Oh yeah, one thing is, this should not be useful in prod or anything. Like most of the time you won't need that, but I just wanted to let you know that in case you're curious about this topic, you can check window that is secure context and look at the context you're in. Right. This actually leads to kind of weird situations at times. Because, for example, here I have this example of an app running locally on HTTP localhost. If I try a window that is SecureContext, it's going to tell me true. But of course, if I click, at least in Chrome, this little info button in the omnibar, I'm going to be told that my connection to the site is not secure. So you can think of it as a UI artifact that's actually more for users on the open web. That's not really relevant here for me as a developer working on my local machine, but it's still there. So it's kind of nice and weird. All right. So yeah, what APIs actually require SecureContext? Quite a lot, and the full list is over here. I'll share my slide later on, but so this is the full list. Oh, okay. Actually, I can also tell you this. So this is the list of features restricted to SecureContext. I think it's maintained manually, so whatever's on this list, you might want to double check it yourself. But anyways, if you need the SecureContext, and if in prod you're using HTTPS, you should be covered. But I just think it's quite interesting to be aware that there is such a concept of SecureContext, and some APIs, specifically sensitive one, like the payment request API, web crypto, Bluetooth, sensor, and service workers, which some of you might be familiar with. All of these do require SecureContext. Another thing that I think is reflected in the MDN link I have posted here on the chat is that this can vary across browsers, which I'm sure you're all very happy about. All right, so much for SecureContext. So then when do you use HTTP localhost? If it behaves like HTTPS, you can just use this all the time by default, right? Like probably you already are. I don't know for you, but I don't wake up in the morning thinking, okay, I'm gonna set up a certificate for local development. Most of the time we do this and it works, right? So this is it. You can just use localhost all the time and you're gonna be safe. And that's just joking, because localhost behaves like HTTPS except when it doesn't. And here I come back to what Cedric posted on the chat. Payment API needs HTTPS. The weird thing is SecureContext is not one-on-one mapping with HTTPS. So sometimes, even though you're in a secure context, your site might not behave exactly like an HTTPS site. You should, though, consider this as more of an edge case. Most of the time, HTTP localhost should be enough. But sometimes, and we're going to talk about these cases, sometimes it's not enough to be in a secure context, and you actually will need HTTPS localhost or HTTPS for your local development. Okay, maybe quick break here. Do we have any questions so far? Not yet. All right, great. Feel free to ask. Yeah, we'll have time for questions in there. Okay, so when are these cases where secure context is not enough? And by the way, this is probably not an exhaustive list that I have, and I'm sure there are cases that maybe you even in the audience have encountered and that I don't know about. It's just a list of some pretty common use cases that you could encounter. So, number one, I think I have 4, 5, something like that. Number one, secure cookie. So, in some cases, or like oftentimes, it's actually good practice to make your cookies secure. Your session cookies, of course, but here in this example, I'm just setting a cookie on the client side just for the sake of the example. What the secure attribute does that you can see here on the right, key 0 value 0, the secure attribute. Once your cookie has a secure attribute, the browser will not send this cookie over an unencrypted request. And just in case, maybe as a side note, for those of you who are familiar with the same site cookie attribute, If you're not, it's okay. It's not important for this talk. But if you are, probably this will ring a bell, because if you want to set your cookie with same site none, you're going to have to set the secure attribute. So anyways, the weird thing is you cannot set a secure cookie even though you're within a secure context. So I think I can show you this. Oh yeah, okay. So I just put this together, so don't look too much at the code, okay? It's just demo code. But here, basically, in my app, I'm just setting a few cookies. I guess we can look only at one example for now. So I'm trying to set a secure cookie here on my app that's running locally. I'm trying this, and I also have a cookie without the secure attribute, a cookie with key 3, value 3. So I'm going to go back to my locally running app here, and we're going to go to the cookies. So I'm going to go to application and cookies and just reload just so you can see. So we can see here that the key 3, value 3 cookie, which is the one without the secure attribute, is set properly. However, the key 1, value 1 cookie isn't set. And even worse, it's failing silently, which is really not great when something is failing silently, because it makes it hard to debug, obviously. One thing I should mention also here is that it's a bit of a weird case, and not all browsers behave the same. And for example, there is an open suggestion, an open bug in Chrome to enable you to set secure cookies in a secure context, so in localhost. What I mean here is that this behavior, it feels weird, it's because it's weird. All right, so this is the first case. You cannot set a secure cookie on localhost, even though it's a secure context. So typically in this case, you might need to use HTTPS for your locally running app for local development. Case number two, yeah, I showed this already. Case number 2 is if you want to debug locally an issue that occurs on an HTTPS website, but not on an HTTP site. So this is intentionally a little blurry, but I can give you an example. Typically, mixed content is such an example. Mixed content issue is what happens when you have an HTTPS page that includes content that is fetched using HTTP. And it's mixed content because it's only partially encrypted. And by doing so, you're leaving the unencrypted content, part of this page, accessible to sniffers and man-in-the-middle attackers. And that all leaves the page unsafe. So this causes a mixed content error to happen. The thing is, on HTTP localhost, so this might happen, for example, I can show you here. I'm going to look at the same app, the deployed version of it, but this time the deployed version that's on HTTPS. And here, I do see a mixed content problem, because what I did here, I did something very bad intentionally just to show you. But what I'm doing here is that I'm loading the images from an HTTP origin, which means that I have here an HTTPS site, which is loading content from an HTTP origin. So I'm typically in a mixed content situation. And here on prod, on my deployed website, I do see the errors pop up, okay? The mixed content here. By the way, I can just quickly show you this. Oh, great. So I don't know if you've seen that in the DevTools before. This is a new-ish feature, which is called issues, which helps you obviously detect issues in your app. You can think of it as really the replacement and, or like, for now, probably, for example, when it comes to cookies or other issues in your app, you might get this as console logs, right? You know, these yellow warnings, which is not super convenient and hard to read and not always super helpful. The issues tab is like this new feature where you can really get a clear. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff just posted a link to to some documentation around the issues tab on the chat. So you can see it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's really great because not only you can see exactly what resources are affected, you also get a description of the issue, and you get a link to some more developer documentation so that you can really, hopefully, stay in the flow and try to really solve the issue in context. Long story short, I'm here on my deployed HTTPS site, and I do see these mixed content issues. However, plot twist, maybe you've guessed already what happens locally. Locally, I do have an issue, but this is something different, and I don't see anything. I don't see any issue about my mixed content problem, which means that in the event that you might have an issue like this, you're going to only detect it in staging at best, and at worst in prod, which I don't wish you. But so if this happens, and if you want to debug this locally, you might have to, it's pretty straightforward to debug in a sense that you know it's a mixed content issue, but if you want to be able to reproduce it locally first as a first step, and to make sure you fixed it properly, you might have to run your dev app as HTTPS. So I think this is case 2. Yeah, this is only the second case. What else do we have here? Any guess maybe in the audience? I'll give you a bit of time. In which other cases do you think you may need HTTPS for local development? Nobody here? Okay, I'll go ahead. Another case, another weird thing that I showed is call external API for dev. This could happen. Ah, okay, good point. Adrien made. We're both. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go to Adrien's point. I don't have here. I don't have it here actually listed, but it can happen that you may be using an API. Like I know that at some point, for example, some of the Facebook authentication API was requiring the requester to be running on HTTPS, which makes sense, right? So typically that might be another case. Yet another case that could be interesting for some of you. WebSockets, Damien, I don't know. I think this works a little bit differently. But I am aware, I have heard, well, service workers, Cedric, service workers should be working properly on a secure context, and localhost is a secure context. So in the basic case, localhost, HTTP localhost is enough for you to be working with service workers. And yeah, Damien, WebSockets, I'm not sure, maybe. If you find out, I would be happy to hear details about this. Thank you, everyone. So moving on to the next case, case 3, anything that's not localhost and that needs a secure context. So it could happen locally that you override your host's file, right? There are a number of reasons why you may want your locally running app to not actually be called localhost, but to have a name that is closer to the name you have in prod. Ah, Cedric, oh, sorry, I will come back to this in a minute. Yeah, there are cases where maybe you're running your dev server locally, but you want to access it via your browser, not via localhost, but for example, by my app. In this case, the browser, the simple version of this is basically the browser will not recognize my app, although it's mapped to the loopback address. The browser will not recognize it as localhost, and it will not, by definition, recognize it also as a secure context. So I can show you quickly. I think here I have this. Yeah, so I have this here running locally, and I still have this issue with the payment request not supported. Why? Although, you know, as I showed you before, this is supported fine in localhost. And although this is the loopback address, payment request here is not supported. Why? Because I'm not in HTTPS, and it's, you know, I've been overriding my host's file. So this is yet another case. One thing I can show you real quick. I think this works only in Chrome. If you do that, so maybe you've seen I have just prefixed. No, that's not what I wanted. Ah, no, sorry. If I do this, I guess I'm gonna confuse. Yeah, if I do this, or however, basically if I, it could be anything here. If I could be doing something like, in Chrome, anything that actually contains a .localhost in the origin name is going to be considered, is going to be understood as localhost. That's a side note. I just wanted to show you this, just so you have seen it. But basically, in the default case where you have simply overridden your host file, and you're accessing your app by the new overridden name in your browser, you're going to have the same issue that it's not going to be supported because it needs HTTPS. Okay, what else do we have? This is case 3 demo. I have showed you case 4, HTTP2. So HTTP2 cannot run in SecureContext. You actually really need HTTPS, the protocol, to be in your browser for it to work. And case 5, probably some other exotic cases, but you'll know because things will break. And real quick to the comment Cedric made. Service workers, I didn't know that, thanks. For service workers, in Firefox, you're actually probably going to need HTTPS. And I guess this is these service workers are probably listed in the features that need SecureContext that vary by browsers. So thank you for this. Okay, so we've now looked at a few cases in which, well, actually, maybe you do need to use HTTPS for your locally running app. So how do you do that? The first option is really the easiest one, and this is a little bit more front-end oriented, but the simplest thing you can do is simply rely on your framework. I'm probably not teaching you anything here, but it's still good to know that React, for example, and other major front-end frameworks kind of have the run as HTTPS option built in. You just need to basically activate a flag in your React start script, and there you go. So let's go and do this in our app, which is also a React app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the flag here on, and I'm going to restart my rights. Okay. And now you will see something interesting. It looks a little weird. What happens here actually is that under the hood, I will show you. What happens under the hood is that React creates a self-signed certificate. Exactly, thank you. So what is a self-signed certificate? Basically, your locally running server is using a certificate that is created by a certain entity, which is you, in your case, your machine, Alice, say, and it's also signed by Alice. So although the name of the certificate is looking good, under the hood, what React just did is to create a certificate for the name localhost. So for the browser, okay, the name is looking good, but it's because it's signed by the same entity as the one that created it, the browser isn't sure that it can trust it. Because normally what happens is that for the browser to actually trust certificates and for the little green lock or for the little lock to appear, you need a certificate that is signed by a recognized authority. We'll come back to that in a minute, but The interesting thing though here is even though the browser recognizes that it's not a certificate which authority it recognizes, it doesn't know Alice as a certificate authority. It doesn't mean the browser cannot use HTTPS. It won't prevent you from doing so. So this looks pretty worrying, right? It looks not like something. It doesn't look like I should bypass and that I should move forward with. However, we are in local development, and this UI in the browser, this browser interstitial, is here to protect users on the open web from man-in-the-middle attack. So all in all, this warning, if you're running your code locally with the loopback address, it's actually not really addressed to you. So what you can do here, and this is something that's considered okay also by also if you ask some teams at Chrome, you can also go and bypass this and proceed to localhost. Unsafe, of course, it would be unsafe. Don't do that if you encounter this on the open web and you see an unsafe certificate. It means that maybe the site is trying to trick you, but here, you know, it's your own loopback address, so you can proceed. So yeah, sure, it's not secure. However, you are using HTTPS here. Maybe one thing I can show you is, yeah, look at what we can see here. We can find our mixed content warnings, which means, which is something you can also only see when you're on HTTPS, making a call to an HTTP site. So we're really now back to the case where our locally running site is behaving like HTTPS, which means although our certificate is invalid, we're using HTTPS locally. One thing you can be doing also is this here. In order to not see this warning, you can use a flag that basically allows invalid certificates for resources that are loaded from localhost only. So there is insecure in the name of this flag, but remember, if you're in local development, for the basic case, this is okay to do something like this. Okay, I guess that's what I wanted to show for the basic case. This, yeah, we just went through this. Right now, all we had to do right in our React app is to add a flag. But what this does under the hood, like I said before, is that this creates a self-signed certificate. So you don't, if you're using a different framework that doesn't have this built in, or if you're in just in different setup, you can go in and create your certificates yourself and tell your server to use these certificates. Right. One thing I can mention also is that openssl is also like an option you can use in order to create your own certificates. However, it has its limitations in the sense that it's hard for openssl to be truly cross-platform on the one hand, and for your whole team to be able to use it without issues. It's a little tricky at times. And the second issue potentially is that you can see it actually here in the comment. You have like a lot of flags and a lot of settings to add, right, in order to generate the right certificate for local development. It's because in and on itself, openssl is not only a tool to create TLS certificates that are like, you know, designed for the web and designed to be compliant with what browsers expect. It does a lot more, but for this reason, because it's not really a specialized tool, it might be a little tricky at times, and it might be tricky to get the right flags on and so on. Maybe this resonates with some of you if you've been using openssl. Maybe not, I don't know. Option 2. So, you know, what we've seen before, this browser warning, which, by the way, I showed in Chrome, the self-signed certificate warning, but it shows up in all browsers. It's not always something you want. Most of the time, if you just want to, like I said, quickly debug a mixed content issue, or even for local development, if you have payments, if you're using the payment API in your front end, it's okay to use the self-sign option. But in some cases, you might want to have a certificate that looks a little more real to your browser. And in order to do that, you can use a tool called mkcert. The first thing I want to say is a little disclaimer. Thank you, Jean-François. Just posted the link in the chat. First disclaimer, mkcert is really a tool only for development. I'll come back to this, but don't use it for any other purposes than local development. I'll tell you why. And the second thing is, actually, when I was researching a little bit this topic, I knew about this tool already, and I was thinking, well, it would be really nice if I could ask the creator of this tool a few questions. What was his motivation? How does he see the future of the tool? Like, what new features he would like to add? And I was very lucky because he happens to be working at Google, so he's a colleague. So it was lucky. It was easy for me to get access to him and ask him questions about this really amazing tool he created. I guess there may be other tools similar to mkcert. Like I said, I'm telling you about it not because it's made by someone who works at Google. It's open source anyways, but more because I realized it was useful for myself. And I mean, you can see with the stars that I guess there are a bunch of other people it's useful for. So what is mkcert? mkcert is a simple zero-config tool to make locally trusted development certificates with any names you'd like, which I guess is the interesting part here, maybe. So how does this work? If you remember the other chart, the other diagram you had before, what this does is it creates a certificate. mkcert creates a certificate, but it also creates a local root certificate authority. It creates a certificate authority that your browser on your machine is going to recognize as a valid certificate authority. So this is, if you think of it, this is your local root store for certificates. And what mkcert does is first, basically it creates mkcert as a trusted CA. And then this trusted CA, this trusted certificate authority, is going to assign the certificate you're going to be creating with mkcert. So in this case, not only is when you create a certificate for localhost, is the name going to look good, but on top of that, the browser is going to look and check if it can see mkcert as a certificate authority in the system root store. And if it's okay, it's going to 100% trust it for HTTPS, like any real certificates. Yeah, another thing I wanted to mention here, I just here wrote down localhost as a name for your certificate, but if you're using mkcert, you could use any name, right? So I think it's a little more interesting maybe in the case, where you've overridden locally your host file, right? Oh, let me go back to this. Yeah, this thing here, right? So this is where mkcert really shines when you want to create a locally trusted certificate for my app. Back to where I was. All right. So, and this is what it looks in the end. This is, for example, of the Mac root store. You're gonna see here mkcert show up. One important thing, I'll say this again later, but it's very important that you never ever share the keys that are associated with this root certificate, because if you do ever share or leak these keys, it means that an attacker who would get hold of these keys could basically create a certificate for any site that your browser will think looks okay. So it means you're vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks for all the sites in the world, which is why I said earlier, only really use this for local development. I'm exaggerating here the risk a little bit because the likeliness of your keys getting leaked isn't high unless someone gets access to your computer. But if someone gets access to your computer, probably you have other problems than just man-in-the-middle attacks. So I'm overplaying the issue here a bit. It's not going to happen if you just snap your fingers. I'm just telling you, be careful. And again, only use this for local development. Right, so let's have a look. Demo time. Oh, this hurts my eyes. Well, actually, I prepared it before, but I'll run the command again so you can see. Oh no, let me give me a second. I'll run in from the second. Great. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is I have installed mkcert as a certificate authority already. I'm like removing it now so I can show you from the beginning on how it looks when you run this. All right. Okay, and now I will do. All right, there we are. Let me just skip the slide. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm aware this might be a little small. Okay. The first step I took already before is that I ran npm install mkcert. It's an npm package. You can install it as an npm package. You will see in the documentation that Jean-François linked in the chat. So I'm gonna do now here. Yeah, okay, let me just remove this. Okay, and okay. So here I just have another tiny app. It's just an index file in another folder. And now I'm gonna create a certificate. My other app is another alias I've added to my host file just to illustrate the case where your locally running app needs to have another name than localhost. And all right, so what do we get here? mkcert, my other app, what this does is this creates a certificate for my other app. What do I get here? I get a few things. All right, so created a new certificate valid for the following names: my other app. The certificate for this app is in my folder at my other app at PEM, and the key at, right. So I have this. However, because I've just uninstalled, just to show you, I've just installed and mkcert as a CA, it's giving me here a little warning. The local CA is not installed in the system trust store. It doesn't mean it won't work, because what I've just done here is actually created a self-signed certificate, but it just means that we're back to the case where you have self-signed certificate and you're going to see this warning in the browser, which is not a problem, but maybe in this case, I want to avoid it. So run mkcert install to avoid verification error. So that's what I'm going to do now. All right, so as you can see here, the local CA is now installed in the Tristan System Trust Store, as well as in the Firefox Trust Store, because the Firefox Trust Store works a little bit differently. I don't want to go there here too much for this talk, but the documentation is all in mkcert. Great, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be able to run this little app. And what I'll do is now I'm just using HTTP server. And here what I'm just doing is I'm specifying the certificate and the key as well as the port. So let's try and have a look at how this behaves. Cool. I have this running. Well, yeah. So let me check what I want to see. My app. Yeah. Oh no, it's called my other app. Sorry. It's this one here. So what you can see here is that I'm directly on a secure connection and I didn't have any interstitial or anything. So this illustrates my point from earlier that with mkcert, you can create a certificate with any other name, with any name that will actually look like a real HTTPS certificate, like a real TLS certificate to your browser. Right. I guess, I don't know why this is here. This was from earlier. Be careful, back to mkcert. Be careful. Like I said, it's for development only. Never ever share your mkcert root CA keys for the reasons I've already talked about before. Yeah, option 3. I'm putting quotes here because if all you want is to run your local development app with HTTPS locally, you don't need this option because this option does more. And the idea is to use ngrok or similar in order to basically have create a tunnel and access your app via HTTPS on a locally exposed endpoint. I'm going a little quick on that one. Yeah. I don't have a demo for this, but basically the setup is pretty simple. It's just a command you need to run, and you can just stick to using localhost 8080 locally, no HTTPS or whatever, and then you can access this via an unexposed HTTPS address. The reason I'm just mentioning this is ngrok does like a lot more than just enable you to do this. So just ask yourself before you go and use ngrok, is it an overkill for your use case? Because if all you're trying to do is to just develop locally or debug quickly an issue that only happens on HTTPS, maybe it's overkill. Maybe it's just a question you can ask yourself. The second point is sometimes some of these tools are not for free. So this is also something you might want to consider. And the third thing is basically this exposes your app to anyone who wants to access it, which could be exactly what you want, which could be great because maybe you're demoing this to clients and you're somewhere on the road and this is super convenient. They have maybe a weird firewall policy, and it's very convenient for you to just, give them this endpoint, give them this this URL, and they can go and try your app. But just be aware of this. Thank you, JF, for posting the link. Right, too long, didn't listen. So if this was a little too long, basically continue using HTTP localhost unless things break. If things break and if you think you need to use HTTPS locally, for example, typically if you need to set a secure cookie locally, you can first take a look and check if your framework enables you to just turn this on with a simple flag. If not, you can create your own certificate and tell your server to use them. If you do that, it's okay for local development to use a self-signed certificate. And if for some reason you don't want to use a self-signed certificate and you absolutely want to avoid this browser warning, you can go and use mkcert. Be sure to use mkcert only for local development. And just one last thing about mkcert, I just want to say is that basically, if you, how can I put that? mkcert is mostly useful if you want to, basically for browser access, right? All the demos I've shown you, this was for browser access. Don't use mkcert if, for example, you need to access like a local endpoint. And if this requires you to deactivate some certificate security checks. For the simple reason that it's very easy to forget that you've deactivated some server certificate security checks, and you wouldn't want that to be actually like deployed in prod. So this is less recommended. This is more for really, like I said, front-end or browser access. Right, merci à tous. And guess we now have time for questions. I hope nobody fell asleep. So yeah, I guess I'll hand it over now back to Jean-François. We'll manage the questions.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Thank you again. It was very interesting, very precise. And so first question, but I think you already have answered it during your talk.
Yeah.
Did you know if the exception you present about the cases that are not working in SecureContext are all the same for all the browsers? For example, you talked about the fact that Secure's cookie are not working in the same way in all the browsers.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about this actually. I have a doc on this somewhere. Just give me a second. Maybe this. Sorry, I will share my screen if it's okay. This is the right doc. Oh yeah, okay. Oh, you know what? I'll just do it like this. Okay, I'll just animate this. Okay. Real quick about cookies. This is a weird thing. So in Chrome, you can't set a secure cookie on localhost. Safari will set some of the cookies that are secure, but not all. And Firefox will set them all. So this is typically a case where the behavior, unfortunately, is not the same across browsers. Now, let's take a peek at the other cases I have here. So that's secure cookies. This actually is more of a wild guess. We could try it out. I would say no, I just want to do 100%. I would say this one, debug locally an issue that happens on an HTTPS website, but not on an HTTP site. I would say this one for mixed content. I suspect this is the same in different browsers, but let me check. Actually, we can try it out. We can check if yeah, we want to check if we see any mixed content issue in Firefox. I just need to remove this first. Right, starting this locally. All right, we have this. So here, no mixed content issue. And now let's look at Firefox, for example. Same behavior I see in Firefox. We don't see any mixed content warning. Right. So I guess it's the same. I'm guessing my short answer would be it's worth checking these cases because the sheer fact that for cookies, Gesundheit, that is what.
Sorry.
Oh, good. I guess, the sheer fact that it doesn't work consistently across browsers for cookies, for me, it's just a sign that check these behaviors, and you gotta see for yourself. The way I just did it for mixed content, because basically I don't have the mapping in my mind right now. I needed to check it out. This is the first reason, and the second reason why it's worth checking cross browsers is because some of this behavior is on the edge of weirdness. Namely, some of this maybe shouldn't happen the way it does. Some of this could be considered bugs, and it could change with time. So whatever I show you and tell you now could be different in 3 months, because maybe browser X and Y has decided, oh, you know what, this should behave this way in localhost because it's like a secure context. I don't know if this answers your question.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Siegfried, maybe in the chat, can you tell us if Maud answered the question during at the end of his talk? Because I think she does. Okay. Because the question was about ngrok. So
sorry.
He was just asking if those issues can be solved with ngrok, but as you say, indeed ngrok can help us. And last question: did you have a list, an exhaustive list of the secure context exception?
So it's a good question. I don't think so. I think there is this list. There is this list of features restricted to secure context. All right. I also am pretty sure, or I think that it's manually updated, which means that you could well be the first person to discover an exception. And I think MDN is an amazing resource, and I think we take it too often for granted. And it's community supported, so it updates just as fast as the first person raised their hand and says, you know what, I'm not sure about this line over here. So I guess my message is also to encourage you, it's a wiki actually. So I'm not telling you all jump on it and change anything you like. I guess it's more of a message from my side to tell you this documentation is supported by the community, and I think if you see something over here that looks off compared to what you observe, I guess it's a great idea to maybe try and contribute and fix something if it needs to be fixed. Was that your question with an exhaustive up-to-date list of secure context exceptions?
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be my answer. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times you'd be surprised. I was super surprised about the cookies thing. I was like, what? You can set secure cookies locally, and it doesn't work the same across browsers. Well, yeah, that's the way it is. You need to see it for yourself to kind of believe it. Okay.
Cedric asked, what did you think using Docker to avoid developing in localhost?
So from my experience, it's great if you have a more involved local development setup. And from my end, is from what I've seen or where I've worked, a Docker setup for local development, it's really great if you have a bunch, of front-end and back-end components, and you don't want to set it up all by yourself. So it's really convenient in that case. If you just have a simple, let's say, front-end app, and you actually have, maybe a dev API that's deployed somewhere specific for development purposes, I wonder if this would be an overkill. But I also think each one their own, and if it's something you're comfortable with, and if this is a setup you're happy with and that's easy for you, I can't think of any reason why it's a bad idea. Maybe there are, but I don't I don't think so. So yeah.
And anyone else have any other question? No. Okay. So if you want, we can stay a little bit more in the roof. So you can directly jump and ask Maud if all your question. Thank you again, Maud.
Thank you, everybody.
I will just cut the live, but we will continue a little bit in the floor.
Just one thing I want to share. There is a Chromium Dev Twitter account that you can follow for all kinds of cool updates, among others, about dev tools, which are like super active at the moment, or you can follow me. Yeah, just wanted to do a shameless plug here, but I'm done. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. See you around.
See you.
Bye, everybody.